and welcome to a tea time writing chat. We're doing a tea time writing chat today because I just don't feel like doing a writing vlog. Writing vlogs take a little bit of effort and it takes a little bit of mental headspace and time away from me while I write. And the last few days, I just haven't really felt like doing one. I just wanted to focus on my writing. But I had a major issue that I wanted to talk to you about, so I've just decided to do a writing chat instead. Unfortunately, I have come to the realization that I need to rewrite my book. That's a terrible realization, actually. I'm going to talk a little bit about how my writing is going, what led me to this realization, and what I'm going to do about it. Rewrite my book, obviously, but I'll get to that in a minute. By the way, this is orange ginger turmeric tea. I love all those things, and it was a new flavor at the store. I was so excited to find it, and it is absolutely delicious. So first of all, I have to say, my writing has been really, really good so far. I have been very productive. I have written every day for the last 2 weeks, and in the last week, I've averaged 1,000 words a day, which is pretty surreal for me. Typically, I only write maybe like 500 words a day, and I've been writing 1,000 words a day for the last week. That is much higher. I'm not sure why. I just think it's because I'm excited about writing and I've been in the zone. I've started to make writing a habit, which I think also helps me write more every day. And I'm overall just really happy with how much I've been writing. I am a little over 44,000 words in, which is almost halfway. I can't believe that. It's quite surreal that I've written half a book already. And yes, so that means I'm going to have to rewrite half a book. So it's time to tell you what happened that made me decide I will need to rewrite my book. For context, I am currently in a series of scenes that happen at a particular location. And these scenes have always been planned. They are outlined, I have everything in order, I'm following the outline. And my plan with these scenes was to do a lot. I was going to do character development, relationship building, also explain more of the world and the history, reveal some of the characters' backstories. I was going to do a lot with this series of scenes. And as I was writing them, I kind of felt like everything I was doing was too early in the book. I don't feel like the characters knew each other well enough to be revealing parts of their past. I didn't think that I had foreshadowed or built up the world accurately enough to drop the world building that I was planning on dropping. And it just felt like overall the significance of these scenes wasn't really hitting, and that it was nice and okay, but it wasn't really driving any sort of emotional or intellectual reaction. As I noticed this, I did continue to write. I do tend to work out things while I write. A lot of times I can write through it, write past it, or say, okay, I can fix this, but I'll do it later. And that was my plan the first night I made this realization. And I wrote, and I just was like, okay, I'll figure it out. I took a day to figure it out. I still couldn't really figure it out. I was just like, this just doesn't seem right. So I decided to write for another day. And as I was writing these next 1,000 or so words, I felt even more strongly that what I was writing did not make sense where it was. And I just started to kind of panic because I wasn't sure how I was going to fix this. I was following my outline, and now all of a sudden what I planned didn't seem to work anymore. And yeah, I was freaking out. At that point, I had known I would need to move these series of scenes further along into the book, closer to the end, and that something else would need to happen in the beginning in order to drive to this series of scenes. And I thought to myself, okay, this shouldn't be hard. I'll just think of another scene or something. Maybe there's something I can pull in from my outline and I'll fix it and it'll be good to go. So I pulled out my outline and I looked at it, and I did find a scene where I had like this incredible aha moment where I saw this scene in my outline and I was immediately telling myself, this is the scene that needs to occur before my sequence of scenes that I'm writing. And I knew it in my heart. I was like, I have to pull this forward. This is the scene. I knew I would have to rework what I thought that scene would be, But I was like, if I do this scene towards the beginning of the book, I can use it to make my characters start to know each other a little bit. I can drop some of the world building and not save it all for the end. And to me, it just made complete sense. But like all things, I take time to consider the implications in terms of my writing. I said, okay, let me take this scene, pull it forward. Let me just mentally think about how I'm going to do this and how it connects. And that's where I came into the major issues. And the biggest issue was mostly around the plot. I had structured the novel in a way that the characters and the plot was moving towards the scenes I'm currently writing, this location. So they had a whole purpose this whole time to get to this location. And then they were going to have another purpose of going to this scene that I'm planning on writing. That was supposed to be later, that I'm bringing forward. And so the idea was basically that they go from point A to point B. And that's how the whole plot has been structured in my writing so far. And if I bring B forward, then I have to rewrite the plot in a way that they have to go to point B before they go to point A. And quite frankly, the only way I can really envision this happening is to restructure the plot and have the characters have different motivations in what they are doing. I have to write the entire sequence of how the characters are going from the beginning to point B. But then my concern is I would have to rewrite everything that happens from point B to point A, which has already been written. I basically wrote from the book's existence to point A. And that's going to have to completely change. I think the characters' motivations are going to change. I think the plot is going to change. Another thing I considered was revealing some information sooner that I had planned on revealing later. I also think I'm going to have to change, honestly, a sort of big plot thing I had planned since the beginning of the book. And it was kind of the whole reason the characters were going to point A. And I don't think it makes sense anymore if I bring point B forward to continue to have them, the reason being point A. I can still, this is getting really crazy. I hope you can follow this. But let alone the plot stuff, I'm also really just disheartened because I know that I'm going to have to rewrite a bunch of dialogue. The interactions between the characters are going to have to change. I already know I'm going to have to change like the first few chapters of my book to accommodate this plot change. I may have to, there's a whole series of scenes in the beginning that I think I may need to cut that don't really make sense anymore if I do this. I also have to evaluate how I built the world and what information I dropped and how that will change as I write. And this, honestly, just the thought of doing this feels like a nightmare to me. I really thought there would be a way to salvage this and for me to keep going. But the more I think about keeping going, I just feel like it's going to be a mishmash of what I thought the book was going to be before and what I think it's going to be now. I mean, my first draft was already pretty bad. And I think after this realization, it's going to get even worse. So anyway, basically, I thought about it really hard. I tried to think about different ways to fix this so I wouldn't have to rewrite it. But what I ultimately feel is best for my story is to pull that scene in the end forward and rewrite the whole first half of the book leading up to that scene. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun, but I really hope I really feel like it'll make the story better, so I hope it works out. So how am I going to truly fix this in my first draft? I will have to rewrite it. I think that's going to happen in the second draft. I do not want to lose focus and progress on this first draft. I have done so well. I'm almost halfway through and I don't want to stop because my fear is that if I stop and try and rework something else like this will happen again and again and again, and I may never finish my first draft. So this is how I'm planning on handling that. I am going to finish up writing this series of scenes as if they were later in the book because I've kind of determined that's the way they need to be. I actually started that last night and it made me feel a little bit better about all the stuff that was happening. It made a lot more sense for me to just be mentally in the space of it's happening later in the book. What I plan to do now is write the event that I planned on writing later, write that next. And I'm going to write it out. It's going to be a series of scenes again, but I'm going to write it with the intention of it's going to be closer to the beginning of the book. And then my plan is just to insert it somewhere in the beginning of the book where I think it makes sense, which honestly at this rate might just be the very beginning. I'm not going to write everything that comes before the scene, like everything that leads up to it. I'm also not going to write everything that goes after it. I just want to write that one event because I know that event is going to happen regardless. I like it. I think it's good for character development. I think it's good for world building. I think it needs to stay. It's just a matter of exactly where do I put it. Once that is written and I've put it where it needs to be, I'm going to continue on with my outline. I think I will hit some roadblocks here and there, especially with moving the scenes around and changing where things are ordered. But my hope is that I can just do enough to get by to finish this first draft. This does change the story and the plot that I had in mind slightly. It's not a total complete loss, but I just have to be more aware of the information I'm providing and what I'm writing in each scene for it all to make sense. I want to go ahead and write the story to the best of my ability so that if there are other issues like this in the future, that I can handle them sort of equally and, create a list of tasks for me to do in the second draft that are more editorial in nature. And I feel like it kind of just fell apart in this moment. I'm going to salvage it the best I can because I do truly believe that what I have realized and decided makes my story better. If I was stuck or felt like this because I felt like my story wasn't working or my plot wasn't working and I didn't know what to do next, this would be a much worse situation. I've already in my head sort of found the solution to the problem I was having. It's just that it requires a lot more work. I just never thought I would reach a point that was this, I don't want to say bad, but I never thought I'd reach a point where I was this panicked. I really was not sure what to do. I don't even really know how bad this is because I've never written a book before. I just know that it's going to take a lot of time to fix it, and that's what concerns me. My hope was to blow through this first draft, get a great first draft going, then edit the second draft. And my version of editing was like calling out minor plot holes and grammar errors and, oops, I forgot to mention this. And now my second draft editing has turned into rewriting the first half of my book. But this is the adventure of someone who's never written a book before. Random stuff like this happens, and you gotta face it head on and make a plan. I've done that to the best of my ability. My plan is to just keep on writing at this point. I should be finishing my first draft in a couple of months, so that means maybe 3 or 4 months from now, I can revisit this topic and rewrite the first half of my book. Now that I think about it, that seems like a really far time away to rewrite this book, but I think it's for the best. I'm just trying to keep a positive attitude about this and just know that this is part of the process and it will all work out. Let's hope.